In this episode, we step into Joshua's world as he inherits Moses' mantle and faces the impassable walls of Jericho. But God's recipe for success had nothing to do with military strength or human strategy. It was about faith, obedience, and alignment with God's words. Hi there. It's our debut episode for Q4, and today we explore the topic recipe for success. You ready? Let's get into it.
First, the key highlights. What to expect in this episode. 1. Joshua's first test. His debut wasn't about conquering Jericho's walls, but conquering his own fears through alignment with God. 2. God's blueprint for success. His promise, His presence, and partnership with Him. Success flows from obedience garnished by God's power. 3. Redefining prosperity. True prosperity isn't just wealth or fame, but faithfulness and harmony with God's Word. 4. Grace and law united. Grace saves, the law guides, and together they point us to our desperate need for Christ's righteousness.
For nearly 4 decades, Moses had carried the weight of a nation on his shoulders, guiding, correcting, interceding, even pleading for their lives before God. But then, after 39 long years, it was time to rest. God Himself called His faithful servant to rest. The record in Numbers 27 is chilling in its solemnity.
Go up this mountain in the Abiram range and see the land I have given the Israelites. After you have seen it, you too will be gathered to your people, as your brother Aaron was. For when the community rebelled at the waters in the desert of Zin, both of you disobeyed my command to honor me as holy before their eyes.
Think about that. After years of miracles, plagues, victories, and wilderness survival, Moses would only see the promised land but never enter it. The mountain will be his final destination, at least for now.
Wait, what? After 39 years of sacrifice, he never got to step into the promised land?
That's right, Casey. At least not in this lifetime. And it was not just Moses, Aaron too. Both were denied entry. And the reason? It traces back to one fateful moment when the people grumbled for water in the desert.
Ah, yes, Meribah, the place of quarreling. We read the details in Numbers 21 to 12. Picture it. The Israelites camped at Kadesh in the desert of Zin. Miriam had just died, grief still fresh in the camp. And then, no water. The people erupted. Complaints turned bitter. Voices rose against Moses and Aaron. They even said, "Better Egypt than this wilderness death." Desperate, the brothers fell before God in the tent of meeting, and God gave clear, simple instructions. Speak to the rock, and it will pour out water. But frustration got the better of Moses. Anger boiled over. Instead of speaking, he struck the rock. Once, twice. And yes, water gushed out, plenty for the people and their animals.
So the miracle still happened?
Yes, but obedience was fractured, trust was broken. And in that moment, God declared, "You will not lead my people into the promised land." The waters may have quenched their thirst, but cost Moses and Aaron their destiny, at least in this lifetime.
Herein lies a very important principle for both the leaders and the led. Let us begin with the led, or followers. For the followers, the endless cycle of rebellion by the people, a mixed multitude, pushed Moses to a breaking point, a point he would never have reached on his own. Their murmuring and defiance became the spark that drove him to cross the line, and it cost him the very land he had fought toward for 40 years.
So, their attitude actually played a role in Moses stumbling.
That is correct. Sometimes, usually imperceptibly, we can become stumbling blocks to our leaders. Think about it. Our rebellion, complaints, bitterness, ever finding faults in everything but never willing to volunteer, not forgetting the regular, our destructive gossips. These could push someone who has faithfully carried us right out of the will of God. The lesson: may none of us ever be the reason why a leader stumbles away from the church, from his walk with God, or worse, from heaven itself. No bueno. Remember this.
But followers aren't the only ones with lessons here. Leaders, listen closely.
In your zeal for God, know when to step back and give God space to be and do God. Two wrongs can never make it right. Never let frustration drag you into sin while trying to confront sin. That was the tragic misstep of Moses and Aaron, and for it, they forfeited entry into the promised land.
But didn't God still show mercy?
Actually, he did, Casey. He allowed Moses to glimpse the land from afar. And later, centuries later, Moses would stand with Jesus at the Transfiguration in the Promised Land. A reminder that even when consequences fall, God's mercy is never absent.
Back to the story. After God's verdict in Numbers 27:12-14, Moses does something remarkable. Instead of arguing for his own case, he pleads with God to appoint a new shepherd, someone who would lead Israel into the land he himself could not enter. And in verse 18, the Lord says, "Take thee Joshua, the son of Nun, a man in whom is the Spirit, and lay thine hand upon him."
And right there, between verses 19 and 23, Joshua is officially anointed. The mantle is passed down.
Wait, Joshua? Taking over from Moses? I'd be terrified. How about you, Grandpa?
Me too, Casey. If I was Joshua, I would be freaking out. Taking over from Moses? That's a huge shoe to fill in. That's the same guy God had used to shake Egypt with 10 devastating plagues, break 4 centuries of slavery with nothing but a staff and God's power, split the Red Sea in two while an entire nation walked through on dry ground, toss a branch into bitter waters and turn them sweet. And most of all, the man who spoke with God face to face as a friend.
How about you, Daddy?
Me, I mean, if I were Joshua, I'd be asking, how in the world can I ever measure up to Moses? Why did you even pick me? That's exactly what most of us will think, Casey. But here's the truth: that's a wrong perspective.
Then what's the right one?
Think of it like a light bulb in your study room. For years, that bulb lit your space, helping you read, study, accomplish so much. But one day, it burns out. You replace it with a new one. Now tell me, have you really lost the light?
Well, no. The light is still there.
Exactly. The bulb may be gone, but the power source never shut off. The current was always there. It just needed a vessel. Moses may have stepped down, but the source, the Almighty, was still and always will be on duty. It was never about the vessel, it was always about the power behind the vessel. The same principle applies today. No matter who God raises up, the Sabbath school superintendents, the women leader, the men's ministry leader, the elders, the deacons, even the pastors, the GC president, regardless, the real leader of his people has not changed. Throughout the ages, God has called men and women to lead his people. However, it is crucial to remember who the true invincible leader of the church really is, the one who never steps down, God himself.
If you ever find yourself in Joshua's shoes, standing on the edge of an impossible assignment, the secret isn't in the size of the shoes. It's in the size of the God who has called you. If you will align your heart with Him, I have come to learn that the Lord always assumes the responsibility of delivering on the task.
The book of Joshua perfectly articulates this principle. Chapter 1 unfolds like a three-part blueprint. Number 1, the task. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I'm about to give to them. I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I promised Moses.
That's huge! Cross a raging river and lead a nation into enemy territory?
At this point, Joshua is probably freaking out, so God goes on to reassure him. No one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous. See it? God wasn't just handing Joshua a task, He was handing him His presence.
So the mission wasn't about Joshua's strength, it was about God's.
Exactly. But here's your thought piece, the condition. This will be a human divine partnership. And this relationship, as it is today, there are things that God will do, but there are also things that we humans will have to do. And God clearly elaborated this in verses 7 to 9. It reads, be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it. Keep this book of the law always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night. Then you will be prosperous and successful. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. In a nutshell, divine promises plus human responsibility is equal to a divine human partnership that leads to success. God's presence was guaranteed, but obedience was the key to unlocking success.
Joshua will someday look back at this humble beginning and marvel, not at his own strength, but at how much the Lord had accomplished through him. And here's the recipe still true today. When God calls, focus more on aligning with Him in complete obedience and let Him worry about filling in the shoes of your predecessor. Besides, it's not a competition. Moses was called to cross the Red Sea and Joshua the Jordan. Different sizes of the same problem, but the goals are the same, clearing all hurdles and leading God's people home.
Moving on, the first chapter of Joshua serves as an introduction to the whole book. It comprises four speeches that correspond to the four main sections of the book. First, the crossing, as we find in Joshua 1, verse 2 to 9. This captures chapters 1 through chapter 5, verse 12. The second, the conquering, as we find in Joshua 1, from verse 10 to 11, detailed in chapters 5, verse 13 through 12 to 24. The third is the dividing of the land, to find in Joshua 1, verse 12 to 15, expanded in chapters 13, verse 1 through 21, verse 45. And finally, the serving by obedience, so find in Joshua 1, 16 to verse 18. That's the heartbeat of chapters 22 through 24, verse 33.
So, Joshua 1 isn't just an intro. It's like a table of contents, a roadmap for everything that follows.
That is correct. A divine roadmap, written not just for Joshua, but we too can glean some important principles as we follow where God leads.
In chapter 1, God lays out the game plan in 4 simple words: cross, conquer, divide, serve. And the rest of the book of Joshua details exactly how the people, in obedience, cooperated with God and the beautiful outcomes.
Now, God had already promised to give them this land as an inheritance. He made this commitment to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, then to Moses, and now to Joshua. With over 4 centuries between Abraham, to whom he first made the promise to, and Joshua, who will be overseeing its fulfillment, we glean our next series of takeaway lessons. Time may wrinkle our skin and age our bones, but it can never age the word of the living God. The promises of God do not lose their relevance or potency due to time elapsed. If God has said it, He will do it, now or later. Know this and know peace.
So, it's automatic then?
Not quite. There had to be alignment, God, Joshua, and the people moving as one to assure success in the forthcoming conquest of the Promised Land. We see the same principle of alignment preceding a manifestation of the promise on the day of Pentecost. This is as true today as it was then. To claim His promises, we must believe His word even when logic scoffs. Align with His presence because His presence empowers His words/promise. Do the needful, obeying faithfully while trusting Him to bring it to pass. That's the recipe.
So now you know what to do. Just like the Hebrews were promised Canaan, we too have been promised the heavenly Canaan. And the principle? Exactly the same. Align, obey, believe, and do.
Moving on. Joshua's very first assignment as Moses' successor was no child's play. His debut? Conquered Jericho. Across the Jordan stood fortified walls, towering, impenetrable. The Canaanites were trained for war, their cities built for defense. And Israel? Just wandering nomads, no war machines, no military training. Humanly speaking, this wasn't just risky, it was suicide.
Wait. So even mighty Egypt, the superpower of the day, couldn't secure Canaan. And now Joshua has to do it with a bunch of ex-slaves?
That is correct. Failure here would not just mean defeat, it would mean losing the people's confidence right at the beginning of his leadership. Everything was at stake.
And Joshua knew this wasn't just one battle. He had walked beside Moses long enough to see the real war, forces within and without, rebellion in the camp, enemies at the border, obstacles at every step. The fight for the promised land was never going to be a sprint. It was going to be a lifelong war.
And here is the weight of it all. Joshua's very first test was not just about Jericho's walls, it was about his own heart. Would he fully align with the God who had promised victory, or will fear and the human logic prevail? Seeing the weight of Joshua's challenge, God Himself steps in. In Joshua 1 7 to 9, the Lord lays down principles that echoes across time. Truths as vital for us today as they were for Joshua standing before Jericho. He goes, be strong and very courageous. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not tremble or be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go.
So, God doesn't just give him a mission, He gives him courage to face it.
Yes, but notice, courage wasn't the whole recipe. God slipped in the real key, alignment. Listen closely. He goes, be careful to do according to all the law which Moses my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, so that you may have success wherever you go. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have success.
So, success wasn't just about military power or human strategy, it was about obedience.
That is correct. The journey to Canaan was riddled with opposition, giant walls, trained armies, hostile nations, but God's formula cut through it all. Align with me, and I guarantee you will not fail. Success is not just about the abstinence of battles, but the presence of God in those battles. And with God, the outcome is guaranteed. Remember this.
And here's where Joshua's story meets ours. The principle wasn't just for ancient Canaan. It's for us on the road to the heavenly Canaan. Brother Paul captures it perfectly in Ephesians 6. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of His might. Put on the full armor of God, so that you will be able to stand firm against the schemes of the devil. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against rulers, against powers, against the world forces of this darkness, against the spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly places.
So, our Jericho isn't made of bricks and stone. It's every sin, every temptation, every dark force that wars against us, making it home?
Exactly. Today, just as in Joshua's day, the battlefield is real. The enemies are fierce. Only now they're spiritual. Our mission? To stand firm, clothed in God's armor, holding fast to His word. And just like He reassured Joshua then, He does the same to us today. Lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Matthew 28:20. If His presence was enough to silence Joshua's fears, then it's more than enough to banish ours today.
So remember this. Jericho may look impossible, but victory was never about walls. It's always been about the God who brings them down.
Joshua was promised success if he adopted God's recipe. What does that really mean?
We live in a world where success is measured by bank accounts, corner offices, followers, social media accounts, fame, and the list goes on. But think about it. If all of these will be destroyed at his appearing, Do they really define success in God's eyes?
The Hebrew words in Joshua 1:8 give us a clue. Tzalak means accomplishing what was planned, finishing the mission. Sakal means to act wisely, to walk prudently. In God's dictionary, prosperity isn't just wealth. It's wisdom, obedience, and alignment with His word, His calling for your life.
So, you're saying success has less to do with how much I own and more to do with how closely I walk with God.
That's exactly right, Casey. True prosperity is not anti material wealth, but it places the spotlight more on alignment with God and His calling in our lives. Take Joseph, for example, sold as a slave, locked in prison, falsely accused, and yet the Bible keeps repeating the Lord was with him and he prospered. Prosperity was not his circumstances, bank account or position, it was his faithfulness to God. And Psalms 1 paints the same picture. The righteous man delights in God's law day and night. And the result, he becomes like a tree planted by streams of waters, rooted, flourishing, fruitful. That's prosperity in God's kingdom.
I've been waiting to ask this. If that's true, then what's the real relationship between grace and law? Are they working together, or are they in conflict?
Grace saves you. The law guides you. And both point you to the same place, your desperate need for Christ's righteousness. So here's the thing. No matter how hard you try to obey, your failures will remind you that you need His covering righteousness. And no matter how deeply you fall, His grace reminds you that obedience still matters. So true success? It's not necessarily fortune, fame, or applause. Those are important, but in the long time, they add no value to our eternal destiny. What does is living in harmony with God, walking in faith and obedience, hand in hand, until the day He looks at you and says, "Well done."
And that's a wrap for this week, our first episode for this season. Thank you for starting with us. One down, 12 more to go. Next week, we will be exploring the topic Surprised by Grace. Till then, I remain your Sabbath school doodle, doodling out, still making it make sense, one study.
If this message stirred even a whisper in your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Smash that like. Drop a comment. Share this with someone who needs a faith boost. And don't forget to subscribe to be notified when we publish the next episode. And hey, if you haven't yet made that life-changing decision to follow Christ, the invitation is still open. Don't wait. The clock is ticking, and grace is calling. Remember, we weren't born just to survive and pay bills. We're still auditioning to reign in heaven. No retreat. No surrender.